So just trying to sort of bring you to a close now. One of the sort of questions I have, and I thought about whether to ask you or not, and I'll ask you if I may directly. Do vice chancellors actually really care about apprenticeships? You know, it's a small part of what they do. You know, and you talk, you talk to universities as a whole. Is this something a case of fear of missing out because everybody else has done it? What's the need for them to look at apprenticeships?
It's a very pokey question because I think it will differ. If you think about the size of the HE sector, it will differ from institution to institution. But if you think that 105 universities are in the market to deliver apprenticeships in England, you can't do that without good leadership, without a strong vision at the very top. Governance requires it. Quality requires it. I think what we've seen in the early days of those early adopters has been individuals with the passion. And it was those people that I gravitated towards who saw that actually apprenticeships were moving and aligning quite clearly with HE, quite clearly aligning with their existing provision. And that was always where we said that should be your start point, that actually you should align with the things that you do well already. And that's where we saw rapid growth and take up in those early days. There's always an issue for some VCs around the viability of funding and the affordability. But over £600 million worth of starts in my membership, in just my 85 universities last year, that is always going to be small relative to the overall size of income earned through university delivery, but we were never expecting it to replace. But if you think that some universities, they're increasingly looking at 40% of their new learners are apprentices. That's sizable. Even where you've got a small institution like Leeds Trinity University, for example, on the back of their apprenticeship developments, they've actually expanded into new disciplines. They're opening up a new department in nursing. They've moved into IT, into policing. That was not their core or traditional provision. And we've seen an expansion into new areas, and they've built their own capacity and capability in new occupations. And I think that's really exciting. So it will differ. There are still some VCs who say there's no money to be made in apprenticeships, but there are those who say there is absolutely money to be made.
Okay.
I think, when we talk about skills, we talk about skills policy, inevitably it becomes quite tribal. We often hear that actually the priority should be young people, lower level skills, focusing on those that have actually not, got the sufficient requirements for progression in and through work from their experience of school or college. Whereas I would argue that actually, look at what we've built over 10 years, that we've got a system that actually now engages providers and employers in a very different way. And employers are now providers. And that's a very powerful thing. We don't just have a provider-led system. We are listening actively to what employer need is and how they want it to be delivered in the context of their own workplace practice. And I think that's something that we can powerfully say that further education colleges, higher education institutions, and independent training providers and employer providers have done jointly.
Canny Conversation Podcast Series 5 by Safaraz Ali.